Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Power of Reason. If you're watching this, well done, because this is the 8th episode and we have come a long way together. The episodes do become slightly more difficult as we progress, and they do build upon knowledge of the previous episodes. So once again, if you stumbled upon this episode and have not watched previous ones, I invite you to go back first. Right. Last time I left off by mentioning the idea of artifacts of the statistical methods. An artifact, in this case, is basically just a false result. We look at the world and sometimes we give wrong explanations to what we observe, because what we observe is greatly influenced by our imprecise method of observation. We have seen that using a small sample in statistics can lead us to reach inaccurate or wrong conclusions. We've seen this last time. There is another major effect which will lead us to misinterpret our observations, the effect of regression to the mean. And this concept can teach us a big life lesson, as we will see. But let's begin with a simple definition of regression to the mean. If a random variable is extreme at its first measurement, it will be closer to the average or mean on successive measurements. This effect is called regression to the mean. Let's get into an example right away. If today is the hottest summer day ever recorded, it is likely that in the following week the temperature will be lower, closer to the average summer day. Here, the random variable being measured is temperature in summer, and the extreme is the highest temperature on record, which then regresses in the direction of the average temperature, or mean temperature. A similar thing could be said about the coldest winter day, which is likely to be followed by a day slightly milder or closer to the mean. Another example: if you're having the best meal you've ever had, right now, it is likely that tonight for dinner, your meal will not match that. It will be just your regular meal. An extreme is likely to be followed by something less extreme and more average. If all of this sounds strange, let me explain a bit better the mechanics of this. Regression to the mean happens when we measure a variable that depends on several factors, including, and very importantly, random fluctuations due to luck or chance. Let's see some hypothetical examples to make this a bit clearer. We all know that happiness tends to randomly vary over time and for different people. Many things can make someone happier than average at a particular time. Their business is going very well, it's a sunny day, or meeting someone special, buying a new house. Similarly, many things can make one very unhappy at a particular time. The death of a pet, a bad headache, being fired, or being dumped. Suppose we take a random group of people from the larger population and we ask each of them how happy they are. And then we calculate the average or mean happiness of the group. Once we have the mean, we will notice that most people report a happiness close to the mean. This is because in statistics we have a Bell distribution called Gaussian. Actually, I'm going to show you. Bear with me one moment. So this is what Bell distribution looks like. On the horizontal axis, we have happiness. On the vertical axis, we have number of people. And right here, we have the mean happiness. Here. That's the mean happiness. Now, if we look carefully, we will notice that the bulk of the people which are under the curve lie close to the average. Then, of course, we have people who report to be extremely happy on this end of the bell, and people who report to be very unhappy on this end of the bell. So most people are average in their happiness, but some people are extremely happy. Perhaps they're just happy in general, but also happy that in that moment due to some current extraordinary circumstances. On the other end of the scale, some report to be very unhappy. Maybe they're just unhappy in general, but many are going through particularly tough times. Now, suppose that from the sample that we surveyed, we take the top 1% people who rated themselves as happiest. The average happiness score will be a lot higher than the average for the whole group. So let's put it here, for example. This is the average happiness for the group, and this is the average happiness for the happiest people. So it's a lot happier than the average for the group. After 6 months, we take the same people from the initial top 1% and ask them again how happy they are. What we will find is that their average happiness score goes down, moving towards the mean happiness of the population. It regresses towards the mean. The initial larger group of people was chosen at random, and some were very happy in that moment, which in many cases had to do with fluctuations of luck in that moment. Because happiness fluctuates with luck and constantly changes, once you are at the happiest, you can't get any happier. So if your situation changes, any small change, you're more likely to become a bit less happy on average. So we will find that the initial top 1% are now closer to the mean happiness of the country. And the new top 1% is a whole new set of people who perhaps were close to the mean originally, and by random fluctuations of luck are now very happy on the day of the second survey. We observe regression to the mean. Measurements that are extreme at one point are more likely to shift towards the mean, because the circumstances that allow the extreme result are always changing. The regression to the mean is not a law of nature, but merely a statistical effect. If someone is extremely happy now, they won't necessarily be less happy in a few months, but they are statistically more likely to be less happy. Ignoring the effect of regression to the mean can lead to erroneous interpretation of data or situations. Consider success. Success is a combination of luck and skill. This is particularly evident in sport. Since our mind likes to form a causal story, we tend to attribute results mainly to skill. The truth is that luck plays a big role too. And ignoring this fact means ignoring also regression effects. At the elite sport level, for example, differences in skill are small, but during a performance, luck can play a big role, especially if the performance is extremely good or extremely bad. If a performance is extremely good, luck has helped, which means that the next time they will likely be less good. It will regress towards the mean level of performance. Once again, this is not a law, but merely a measurable statistical effect. Ignoring regression effects can have negative consequences. In the 70s, the cognitive psychologist Daniel Kahneman was called to help the Israeli army with Air Force pilot training techniques. The main military instructor reported that praising a pilot's good performance was counterproductive because he would do worse the following time. The instructor then carried on by saying that punishing a bad performance always resulted in an improvement the following time. What the instructor had observed in his experience was regression to the mean, but he gave it a causal interpretation, a causal explanation. According to him, improvement was caused by the punishment, and deterioration was probably due to complacency, caused by the praise. In reality, a pilot doing exceptionally well on one occasion was largely due to luck on that day, maybe favorable conditions, a good mood, etc. And given that that was the best that the pilot had ever done, any change in circumstances meant that he was more likely to do worse after that. A pilot doing his worst on one day was also due to bad luck, maybe unfavorable condition, tiredness, etc. From there, the pilot could hardly do worse, because that was his worst performance. So the next time, he was bound to do better whether he received the punishment or not. Kahneman's additional conclusion, which is in his book, was that a perverse condition of life is that we tend to be nice to people when they please us, or when they please us the most, and nasty to them when they disappoint us the most. Which means that statistically we get punished for being nice and rewarded for being nasty. Because of course, the best pleasure is rarely followed by a better one, and the worst disappointment is rarely followed by a worse one. I will add once again that this is only a statistical effect, so don't try to attribute causality to your behavior. This is just some food for thought. Another example, also from Kahneman, is of when he was once watching a ski jump competition at the Olympics. Each participant has 2 jumps at the ski jump. He noticed that the commentator of the competition would say things like, "Norway had a very good first jump. Now they are probably nervous and will do less well." And then again carried on by saying, "Canada had a very bad first jump, and now they have nothing to lose, they will be relaxed and probably do better." What the commentator had picked up in his experience was the effect of regression to the mean, but he was giving it a causal explanation. Athletes who did extremely well due to luck tend on average to do less well on a second attempt, and vice versa. Nothing to do with stress or relaxation. Our mind cannot help giving a causal explanation, even if the effect is merely an artifact of the statistics. This can be detrimental in many studies that are published and that ignore correct statistical inference. For example, let's go back to the group of people we surveyed for happiness earlier. This time, let's take the bottom 1% of people who reported to be the most unhappy. So, there'll be the people here under this portion of the curve. Suppose that someone is claiming that taking a particular pill for a month can cure unhappiness. Taking a pill, drinking a drink, whatever it is. Let's go for the pill. So they take the 1% unhappiest people, give them a pill for a month, and then ask them again how happy they are now. Many people will report to be happier, and the average happiness of this small group will be now closer to the mean happiness of the whole group. But we know that very unhappy people are an extreme group and likely to move closer to the mean with time anyway. So how do we know if the pill had an effect at all? You can't simply say people are happier, the pill worked. A proper clinical trial requires a control group. So we take the very unhappy people and split them in two groups. We give one group the actual pill and another group a placebo pill. So a pill that looks exactly the same but has no active principle in it. After a month, we test the happiness of the two groups. We know that on average, both groups will be happier due to regression effects. But if the group taking the pill is actually happier on average than the placebo group, then the pill works. Otherwise, we discard the claim altogether. Any trial without a control group is most likely not valid, because we can observe false results due not only to regression, but also to sample size effects or wrong attributions of causation once a correlation is observed. And we've discussed this previously. Let's end this episode with one more fun example to explain how regression to the mean happens when two variables are not perfectly correlated. I once was out with some friends. We're having a few drinks. And at some point, this stunning girl walked in. And everybody was looking at her. She looked incredible. And sure enough, she was followed by her boyfriend. Even though he looked friendly, one would describe his looks as average at best. My friend John had a few drinks and could not help but crying out loud. Why is it that really beautiful girls always date unattractive men? A bit harsh, but everybody had their say. It makes the girl feel more secure, unattractive men are funnier, they will try harder, etc. Everyone was trying to find a causal explanation, which surely it is good pub conversation. All their speculations were certainly richer and more entertaining than a simple true fact. Attractiveness levels in couples are not perfectly correlated. Yes, there is some correlation, of course, because sometimes attractive people want to date someone attractive, but most often people just date someone they happen to know and like. By regression to the mean, an extremely attractive girl or guy is more likely to date someone less attractive than her and closer to the average. If there was such a thing as an attractiveness scale, which obviously doesn't exist, attractiveness is subjective, but let's assume for the fun of it, and this girl was in the top 1% of the attractiveness scale, she would be way more likely to date someone in the remaining 99% than someone in the top 1%, because, well, there are so many more people in the 99% group, and the higher number overrides the relatively weak correlation. So this example showed us how imperfectly correlated variables regress to the mean. Of course, I have made this story completely up. This never happened. There's no such thing as an attractiveness scale. There's no such thing as my friend John. But hopefully you've taken something instructive out of it. What have we learned from all this long chat? Well, if this is the best IGTV series you've ever watched, your next one is statistically likely to be worse than this. If this is the worst IGTV series you've ever watched, well, I have great news for you, because the next one will probably be better. If this is just your average series, well, not much will change for you in the future. But for now, you can only look forward to the next episode, in which I will talk about stereotypes. So, bye for now.